Hey guys, tonight wander into a frozen Soviet swamp where something unnatural pulses beneath the earth. Not a relic of war, but a sleeping monster born from ambition, 3 nuclear bombs buried deep beneath the forest floor. Tonight, you'll witness the eerie calm before a man-made quake. See what happens when humanity tries to reshape nature with radiation, and walk the edge of a crater that still glows on satellite maps. You probably won't survive this without a chill down your spine, so before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. The wind is stiff with ice, even in late March. Snow crunches beneath your boots as you step off the narrow, unmarked path and into the dense forest of the Komi Republic. Trees tower above like silent sentinels, their bark blackened with age. Their branches skeletal, but you're not here for the trees. You're here for what lies beneath. Beneath this frozen swamp, buried 540 feet down, are 3 nuclear bombs. No, this isn't a battlefield. There's no war here. At least, not the kind you'd recognize. This was a construction project, a peaceful one. They said you kneeled down at the edge of what locals call Atomic Lake. It's about 1,300 feet long, as wide as a football field, and ringed with faded radiation signs that no one seems to enforce anymore. The water is murky, still, and unervingly silent. In spring it fills, in winter it freezes, but it never flows, just a stagnant wound in the middle of the woods. In 1971, the Soviet Union picked this spot for a bold test part of their grand plan to reverse the natural flow of rivers and bring life to the deserts of Central Asia. They called it Project Taigá. The goal? Use nuclear explosions to blast a canal through solid earth, skipping decades of manual excavation. Logical, right? Why dig when you can detonate? The 3 bombs were placed in perfect formation, each spaced 525 feet apart. The yields? 15 kilotons. Each roughly the same size as the Hiroshima bomb, but buried deep in hopes that fallout would stay underground. When they detonated, the earth didn't scream, it heaved. A low, guttural thunder rolled through the trees, mud, ice, and ancient. Peat shot skyward like geysers from some forgotten world. Trees flew like matchsticks, steam hissed for hours, and then came the crater. You stare at it now, trying to imagine the sheer force it took to shape it. From above, it looks like a scar or a clean gouge in the forest flesh, yet somehow beautiful. A perfect oval surrounded by chaos. The Soviet engineers called it a success. The crater matched the models. No major side cratering. Radiation within acceptable limits, a Soviet specialty in optimistic phrasing. But even back then, some voices inside the ministry muttered warnings. One geologist joked that nature doesn't like to be rushed. Another, more grimly, asked what happens when the ice melts and the radiation seeps. They were ignored. See? The idea of using nukes to build canals wasn't unique to the USSR. The Americans had something similar, Project Plowshare. But where the U.S. hesitated, the Soviets charged forward. Between 1965 and 1988, they set off 122 so-called peaceful nuclear explosions across their vast landscape. Need a gas cavern? Blow one up? Need to dam a river? Blow that too. One particularly odd example. They used a bomb to seal a runaway gas well in Uzbekistan, which, to be fair, worked. Nothing like using an atom bomb to put out a fire. It's like using a meteor to kill a cockroach. But tonight's story isn't about fires, it's about a swamp and a canal that was never built. You walk the ridge of the crater, careful not to slip. The snow is thinning here. Beneath the powder, you spot streaks of rusted metal, fragments of equipment, maybe, or fences long since collapsed. Some of the older trees are returning, gnarled and twisted like they're unsure they want to be here. The plan was to connect the Pechora River, which flows into the Arctic, to the Kama River, which feeds into the Volga and eventually the Caspian Sea. It was part of a massive idea, the Northern River Reversal. Imagine rerouting Siberia's rivers literally, turning them around to water the deserts of Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. Historians still debate whether this was a visionary project or a megalomaniac fantasy. One camp says the USSR wanted to conquer nature, prove that ideology and atom could bend rivers. The other says it was desperation, a dying empire starving for solutions, willing to nuke its own land just to grow cotton. Either way, this swamp became ground zero. The data from this test was promising. At least on paper, the bomb spacing worked. The depth kept most of the fallout underground. Surface readings showed mild radiation, and Soviet media, what little was allowed to be seen, praised it as a triumph of the peaceful atom. But there were cracks in the narrative. The terrain had absorbed less shock than expected. The soil composition was uneven. Some engineers quietly worried the next detonation on different ground might blow sideways instead of down, or worse, up, and then came the whispers that small traces of fallout were detected not just in the swamp, but in Sweden. In the U.S., no headlines, of course. But atmospheric monitoring doesn't lie. You sit by the edge of the water now. It's glassy, still. The kind of still that hums in your ears. There's a line scratched into one of the old signs. Half covered by moss, you brush it off gently and read, 3 bombs made this lake. What will the 4th one do? No one ever answered. This place was meant to be the first of many, a prototype, but it was also the last. The canal was never built. The rivers still flow north, and this lake, the one beside you now, remains a lonely experiment in atomic ambition. You exhale slowly. The air is dry, cold. You swear you hear a faint hum, not from the forest, but from the earth itself. You get up, brush the snow from your coat, and walk back into the trees, leaving the crater behind. Its water still pulsing faintly under the soft light of the stars. The snow fades behind you, but the chill lingers in your bones. You keep walking southward toward what should have been the continuation of a canal. Only there is no canal. Just the endless hush of trees, the occasional rustle of wind across leaves, and the nagging question echoing in your head. What happened after the bombs? In the days following the Taiga detonation, the mood in the Soviet engineering corps was hopeful, even celebratory. The crater was, by their calculations, perfect. Not beautiful, of course, but symmetrical, predictable, and filled with promise. You imagine a giant blueprint unfurling across a planning table in Moscow, a line of craters marching through the forest, each one carefully plotted, each the result of yet another controlled nuclear detonation, hundreds of them, carving not just a canal, but a new Soviet artery, one that would bleed water from the frozen north into the thirsty heart of Central Asia. But hope has a half-life, and like radiation, it doesn't always decay cleanly. You climb a small rise. Below it, a depression stretches, like a shallow basin, not deep enough to be useful, but large enough to remind you this was never meant to be a lake. The sediment has settled. The water doesn't move, and in spring it smells like wet iron. Here's the thing the planners didn't expect. Sediment doesn't respect ambition. The crater filled quickly, but unevenly. It didn't channel water. It trapped it. Instead of a flow, they got a stagnant bowl. Instead of a canal, they got a puddle with a ticking isotopic signature. You reach into your bag, pull out a portable Geiger counter, and power it on. At first, there's silence, then the soft, steady tick, tick, tick. Nothing alarming, but definitely above background. The forest may have grown back in patches, but the soil remembers, especially the cobalt-60 and cesium-137, still lurking beneath the surface. And it's not just here. The Soviet Peaceful Nuclear Explosions (PNE) program went on to carry out more than 120 detonations at 115 sites. They used nukes to mine ore, store gas, seal burning wells, even clear landslides. The U.S. had their Project Plowshare. But let's be honest, the Soviets were the ones who really brought a shovel to the atom. One especially bizarre success. In 1969, a runaway natural gas well in Uzbekistan was sealed using a nuclear bomb. The explosion collapsed the underground cavity. Choking off the fire effective? Yes. Reusable? Hopefully not. You pass a cluster of birch trees, some leaning like they're trying to fall but can't decide which way. The forest feels ambivalent, like it hasn't forgiven what happened here, but has settled into uneasy tolerance. By the late 1970s, that nuclear optimism began to curdle. Reports quietly circulated about radioactive seepage, unstable soil, and elevated gamma radiation. Fallout from the Taiga test, despite being underground, was detected as far away as Sweden and the U.S. That was the turning point, technically. Underground nuclear detonations were allowed under the 1963 Partial Test Ban Treaty, as long as they didn't leak, but leaks don't care about paperwork. Diplomatic protests followed. The USSR, in true fashion, denied violations, but privately. Some insiders admitted what no one wanted to hear. The peaceful atom wasn't quite as peaceful as promised. And then came Chernobyl. You stop, the trees here thin again. Through the gaps, you glimpse another clearing, no crater this time, but a meadow of unusually uniform grass, like something flattened the earth long ago, and the forest still refuses to reclaim it. After Chernobyl in 1986, the tide turned for good. Environmental projects involving radiation were suddenly political poison. Public trust, already fragile, was annihilated. The river reversal dream, once whispered across government offices and chalked onto dusty blackboards, died overnight. There was no funeral, just silence. The Pechora Canal, once intended to link the Arctic to the Caspian Sea, never left the sketch stage. The funding vanished, the committees disbanded, the remaining planned detonations were shelved, their sites left unmarked or forgotten. And yet the atomic lake remained. You reach its southern edge again, walking a slow curve around the rim. It's spring now, and the water glints in the dusk. Somewhere beneath that surface, the crater still holds the echoes of 3 simultaneous detonations. They went off in unison, an artificial thunder, a planned miracle. But miracles don't require radiation suits. Local wildlife did return, but cautiously. Reports from visiting scientists in 2009 and 2024 confirmed the forest has partially recovered, but not fully. The radiation is mostly shallow now, but the subsoil still contains hot pockets, unstable and toxic if disturbed. A few hikers pass through each year, hunters, foragers, even swimmers. Signs remain, but they're weather-worn and ignored, sometimes forgotten completely. One researcher even joked that mushrooms growing nearby were probably the best cooked in the country. But you know better, you step lightly, you don't drink the water. Here's the final twist, for all its flaws. The Taiga project did something no other nuclear project quite managed. It forced an empire to acknowledge its limits, not loudly, not publicly, but in policy and planning. The quiet death of the River Reversal Project said what no headline ever did. Some forces should not be rushed. You pause once more at the edge of the lake. The wind shifts, a soft breeze carries the smell of pine, of thawing moss, and maybe just faintly of ozone and metal. You feel the weight of a dream that cracked under its own radiation. Not a myth, not a rumor, a real place, a real plan, and a real failure etched into the land like a caution sign. Carved in stone, you turn back toward the trail. The forest doesn't say goodbye, but it lets you leave. The forest quiets behind you, and the path seems softer, the crunch of your steps fading beneath layers of snow and silence. The air settles, no longer bracing, just still. The trees no longer loom, they watch. You're not trespassing anymore, you're simply passing through. The radioactive lake lies behind you, its waters still holding the reflection of stars, unmoved by time or consequence. The dream of canals and rivers reversed has faded into the soil, and though it was never realized, it left behind echo-scarred land, glowing maps, quiet warnings. It's strange to think that ambition could be measured in megatons, that a vision for growth and prosperity could be buried beneath a swamp, detonated into existence, and then quietly abandoned. But here, in this forest, there's a certain stillness that feels like wisdom, a slow kind of healing. Nature doesn't forget, but it endures. You take one last breath, deep and grounding. The scent of thawing pine, damp soil, and the crisp bite of lingering frost swirls through you. Whatever lingers below, whatever lessons lie beneath the dirt and water, they remain quiet now. And you? You made it out, back to warmth, back to your own quiet world. Let your eyes rest. Let the hum of distant dreams fade. Let the cold wilderness, with all its strange stories, drift into memory. You're safe now. You're home. Sleep well. If tonight's journey through Soviet ambition, atomic earth-moving, and frozen radioactive swamps gave you chills or simply sparked your curiosity, go ahead and like this video. It really does help the channel reach more curious minds like yours. And if you find yourself coming back for more whispered histories, more strange forgotten places, more stories that live between fact and dream, then hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell. I upload regularly, and every episode is crafted to carry you somewhere unexpected. But I'm not just telling these stories into the void. Drop a comment below with where you're watching from and what time it is. I love seeing our little community stretch across the globe, one soft-spoken story at a time. And hey, what do? You think about the idea of using nuclear bombs to build infrastructure? Genius? Madness? Something in between? I read every comment, and your thoughts help shape future episodes. Thanks for sharing this quiet space with me tonight. Until next time, keep wondering, keep resting, and as always,